Hi, this is my educational philosophy. This educational philosophy assignment for me gave me a chance to be a bit nostalgic and go back and reflect over my initial teacher philosophy from my undergraduate work. And the first line of that, the first statement that I really made, and I do truly believe to this day, is that I believe in the power of students. And what this class has enabled me to do is to find out new ways, better ways to improve upon my teaching abilities, to investigate further into student learning styles so that I can do a better job in helping students to take control and to be more powerful learners in the classroom. That for me starts with memory. I think one of the most important things that really stood out to me was the limited processing capacity of students. I always know that, students have a lot on their minds, but I never truly stop to understand just how much I give them to process. Everybody's attentional capacity is completely limited, and we can only take in so much information at a time. And that's where schemata becomes extremely important. I need to do a better job of paying attention to this and helping students to organize their knowledge, to look at their attention spans, to guide their recall abilities, and provide scaffolding-based experiences. And one of the ways I can really do this is to create these chunks, these meaningful units of information. History is really great in the fact that there are so many interrelated concepts, but at the same time, I can provide them with chunks of information so that it's all related and that they can make those connections together. A very important thing that I came across in our text, and as we talked about it, was the reduction of cognitive load. And as the lectures, we talked about the idea that we as teachers can reduce cognitive load, especially when we, information overload. We can completely control that. And one of the things I need to work on, because I am a lecture-based kind of teacher, and not entirely lecture-based, but I do my fair share of it, is to reduce the amount of information that I bombard students with, visually, auditorily. They have to listen to me say it, they have to see it on the screens, and I can limit the amount of information that I give them in order to reduce that cognitive load. Then as a teacher, as I reduce that, then it also becomes more important for me to really, improve their ability to encode, to use those memory tools for them to kind of take in that information. I need to activate more on that prior knowledge and then start, engage in those guiding questions, getting students to think about it. I do use a lot of memory tools, and they are extremely important. We use songs like Schoolhouse Rock songs and different things like that that aren't necessarily talked about in the text, but at the same time, I do some of those things like the mnemonics. We talk a lot about acronyms and things like that. So it's just, I do those things, but I think I can do a better job at them. And in terms of, paying attention to the fact that my students really do have that limited processing capability. With metacognition for me really hit home when I read that Dewey article, that thinking process, the thinking about thinking and getting students to be thinking. And metacognition, I never really knew what it was before this class, and I think it becomes a huge part of my teaching philosophy because I look at the thought process as mission control. And I think that part of the text really stuck out to me, that, we look at that regulation of metacognition, that mission control, where students need to learn about the planning, the regulating, the evaluation, the different steps that it comes to come to an answer. And, as we teach students to become this self-directed learner, we need to teach them what that thought process really is, because they need to be able to recognize it and to use it on their own. And when they can do that, then they understand the strengths and their weaknesses. They think through the thought process, they find where those gaps are for themselves, and then they can take control over their learning. And, we need to give strategy planning a really important priority. We need to teach students how important it is to strategize this out, because in life, they're going to have to use this on their own. So it's a really important priority that we need to place in teaching. When it comes to motivation, I think this has always been a very important thing for me, and that is to motivate my students. I want my students to do well in my class. I believe in my students. And that comes down to, how do I get them to do their best? Well, I would ideally like intrinsic motivation, but I feel unfortunately sometimes that comes down to extrinsic motivation. The ultimate goal for me is to give students autonomy, give students that control, because with control, I feel like they are more motivated. They feel like it's more important to do well because they're doing it for themselves. And so a way that I can promote that is to really use the informational motivation, where I'm giving them feedback, and through feedback, I'm giving them intrinsic boost, feeling good about themselves so they will continue to do really, really good. I don't want to really get into that controlling aspect of it, because controlling motivation only serves as a control for behavior, and that's really not what I want to see happen. I want to see students, engage in self-motivation and not have to manage their behavior with rewards. Beliefs about self is such an important aspect of it. And when I say I believe in the power of students, I think that really comes down to self-efficacy. I believe in the ability of students, to take control. But students have to feel good about themselves. In order to engage in very challenging tasks. History is not everybody's favorite subject, so having good self-efficacy really helps to give them that performance boost. And I can do this through good display of modeling. Being a good model of educational practices by providing that necessary feedback. If students know what they need to do to improve, they tend to do that. They need to know if they're going to make that change. And a lot of that strong belief in self can come from the fact that they feel like they have control over their own learning. When you give them control, you're putting them in the driver's seat, and they feel responsible, and they don't feel like I am hovering. And I think that that's a really important thing in the idea of student power. I really would love to have a constructivist classroom, and I think in some ways I do. It's where students, are planning and directing their own learning. I want them to feel that autonomy, that control. I want to have a discovery-based classroom. I really feel like that's probably one of the most crucial components in my teaching philosophy, is to give students the ability to work with, to have fun with history. And in order to do that, it's got to be more interactive. And we do have those opportunities in history, and I feel like sometimes we revert ourselves back into the old lecture way of doing things, and I can't do that. I got to break out of the mold. I've got to engage in this discovery-based learning. And a lot of that comes from both my personal reflection and student reflection, and giving students the opportunity to work with each other and to work with history, to get in there and get involved. When it comes down to assessment, we have our straightforward classroom assessment. I provide, my tests are always multiple choice, short answer, true, false, fill in the blank, essay. I try to provide lots of different types of questions. I'm looking for declarative based knowledge, the whats, the procedurals, the hows, the conditionals, the when, the whys, and that's really where my essay writing comes into place. I try to put emphasis on problem solving and critical thinking with my assignments, trying to put situational or simulation based questions on there where students have to take historical concepts, put them into action, and to kind of formulate their own beliefs based on what history did versus what they would do. And I think that's really important when we talk about assessment, is the content and context. Students can process information, but they need to process it in the context. Taking certain concepts and putting it in the situation and using it in that way. And in order to do that properly, I'm a firm believer in feedback. And I think that on assessment, students don't get enough feedback. And I always try to provide a lot of written feedback, but I think also at the same time, verbal feedback will be really good. What has this course really done for me? It's giving me a chance to really engage in personal reflection. I really need to look back constantly over my teaching philosophies. The idea that I have to, improving student thinking is really important here. Getting students on board with the thought process. I do believe in needing to change the motivational tactics here, the intrinsic instead of the extrinsic. Beliefs about self is a huge important thing for students as we try to get them in terms of the self-confidence, the self-efficacy. The importance of discovery-based learning, and then along with that, going back to the importance of feedback. The idea that we want students to engage in a lot of very positive learning, and in order to do that, I feel like it needs to be discovery-based with a lot of important feedback.